Hello and welcome to a much later than usual GAA Embedded here on balls.ie, our weekly GAA show where we speak about the hurling and football matters of the weekend gone. Or in this case, because of the bank holiday and a few other issues, we decided we'd do it in the middle of the week and look a little bit back on the hurling semi-finals and mainly ahead to the All-Ireland or the quarterfinals and ahead to the semi-finals which take place this weekend. Two massive semi-finals to talk to Shane McGrath about in just a couple of minutes. We will catch up with Darren O'Sullivan. We'll do that on Monday when we look ahead to the All-Ireland football semi-finals as part of Monday's show. But also today we've got our man Finch is looking at 22 essential phrases that every GAA fan needs to know. Looking forward to some of them and just making sure I have them all in my locker for when I eventually start going back to matches. And we'll guess the handicaps for both the hurling and football semi-finals with Gary and PJ in a few minutes. But right now it's time to talk to Shane McGrath about hurling. Shane, again, speaking to you a little bit later this week, so it's kind of not as breathless as we normally do on a Monday, and there's a little bit more considered and everything like that. But, you know, we've got two brilliant semi-finals coming up now at the weekend. But, like, just looking back briefly on last weekend, you know, I think unfortunately, the Cork and Dublin match was, you know, there was definitely a lot to talk about and there was some great highlights and stuff like that. But in terms of Waterford and Tip, taking your natural Tip bias out of things, and we'll definitely talk about where this leaves Tipperary, but it was a thrilling and kind of breathless match and the kind of things that we want to see, the kind of game we want to see in knockout hurling at this time of year. Yeah,
it was phenomenal stuff, Mike, you know, and like I suppose I think Waterford's the scoring really says that and talking to anyone, any of the Tip fans who were there or, you know, talking to them since, like I don't think there's no bad feelings towards Waterford getting the victory, and I think most hurling people will understand that overall Waterford were the better team. Now, was it a penalty? You know, we've had the chance to look at it loads of times since, and look, it wasn't a penalty, you know, in my opinion. But you know, at the time then, I think we were down by 4, and that puts us down by 7. But look, I think overall Waterford were a better team. 428. Waterford scored 325 from play, and I think that'll just tell you how dominant they were, really, you know. And I think Tip were trying to play catch up for the majority of the game, and it was just so thrilling though. Like, you know, I was even talking to people about it that mightn't be huge hurling people, but were coming in, watching the game. They said, "Oh, there's 6 points in it. This is over," and they might have went out to the kitchen and came back in, and now there's only a point in it, and John McGrath gets a shot off, and Sean O'Brien makes a great save. And I think that's what hurling is like. I think that's maybe why hurling is the fastest field sport in the world, and then obviously with that Mike brings the excitement that we got down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh last Saturday. But phenomenal game of hurling. You know, a lot of the Tip boys stayed on the pitch afterwards. Whether that's a sign maybe that was maybe the last time we're going to see some of them in the blue and gold. It's hard to call those things right now. Hard for Liam Cahill as well. Like he's a fierce, well-respected man here in Tip, Mike, what he's done with underage, what he's done down in Waterford, the culture he's created. Hard one for him, you know, that his heart will always be Tipperary, but he's the manager, he's a professional man, had a job to do, and I think he made a great statement, said, you know, he doesn't feel any taller or any bigger because he knocked Tipperary out of the championship, but he has a job to do with Waterford. And like, in fairness, I'd say the lads brought it up there during the week as well. Hadn't won a game in 2 years, championship game. Now he's beaten Tipperary, you know, beaten Kilkenny, beaten Clare. You know, I think it's, you know, beaten Galway. Like, you know, it really has reinstilled confidence in the hurling down there in Waterford, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last hurdle, really, well, maybe not the last hurdle to win All Ireland but the last hurdle is to beat Limerick, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But just going back to Tip, actually, I don't want to talk about retirements too much, and we obviously talked about Joe last week and everything that happened there. And you know, we can be shooing lads out the door, as you know, instead of just enjoying them sometimes. But it's funny you say that about kind of standing on the pitch afterwards, and you would imagine for 3 or 4 of those guys, the thought definitely enters their mind. And then you go and you have a winter, and maybe you come back in January, and maybe you go at it again, maybe you don't. But there's a comment here from Chris saying felt like a lot of that Tip team won't see next season. When you retired, you called it day in 2015. Age-wise, you probably had another couple of years. What were you, 32, 31, 32?
Yeah.
You know, some people go on longer, some don't. You're in midfield, you're using up a lot of energy. The legs might not be what they were. Did you know after Croke Park against Galway that day, and did anything change after that? Because I'd be interested in how final those thoughts can be.
Yeah, personally, I probably did. I would have been one of the players. I actually would have stayed on, had a good look around the stadium, you know, and that the next time you might be on the pitch, you might be at a Westlife concert or something like that. Like, so no, I think I knew myself. For me, it was a kind of a life decision, Mike. I suppose we'd a lot going on here at home, and just wanted to be here for my wife, like, and it was, it was 6 times a week I was putting the gear in the bag, and life took over, and I suppose I would have got married then in December 2015, and I think that's what it is nowadays for people, that nobody wants to be retiring anyone, but like you do get to a certain stage, 32, 33, and sports science wise, we've never been able to recover better or know how to recover better. Our managements haven't known how to manage these guys who have given maybe 10, 11, 12 years service. But I just think life takes over. And I think you get to an age of 32, 33, a lot of guys might have been involved in the panel like since they're 19 or 20. And you've missed out on maybe 10 years of the crack with your club mates. You've maybe missed out on a lot of stags, a lot of weddings, a lot of social events that you just couldn't go to, because you had to understand that you have to, I won't say sacrifice, because I think it's a privilege to play for your county, but you had to forego those things. And I think that's what's happening now with a lot of guys nowadays, maybe stepping away, who could have gone on another year or two in the broader public's opinion. But I think they just feel that, look, I want to build a house. I want to get married. I want to go further in my career. And they just, maybe in comparison to 20 years ago, they're just seeing that the world is a bigger place outside of hurling, for my own personal experience, I suppose I was in Alaska for the 2016 Munster Championship games, and look, nobody on the ship, the cruise ship we were on, really cared what was going on in the Munster Championship. And I suppose it's an eye opener to think that when you're in that bubble, you think that's your world, but there's a lot of people that don't really mind what's going on. But it's absolutely brilliant to be there, and I think what's the biggest compliment I can give to anyone who's an inter-county player is you are definitely a better person, sporting wise and in your own life, and you'll go further in work and everything for being involved in county panels, and because of the dedication you give. People see that you have a good work ethic, you're part of a team. And I think 99, you meet a lot of them, Mike. You talk to a lot of 99.9% of guys, inter-county guys, and the ladies side of it as well. They're absolutely brilliant people on and off the pitch as well. And I think that's a testament to the environments and the cultures they're in because of inter-county setups.
Yeah, absolutely, and the dedication and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's funny. It maybe that's where the professionalism versus amateur comes from. People sometimes find it hard to draw a line when you guys are doing so much and training so much, but maybe it is that your life is sitting there on hold. You can't kind of you're also working, you're also doing things. So, but by the time you get there, it's not a case of you have another few years in the legs. It's a case of, I've done this for too long now. My life has to kind of come next. Yeah, so it's very interesting side bar to the conversation there. But on those guys, because I do want to talk about Waterford, and I'm conscious of the fact that I did this last week as well, where I started with Galway. But it's no disrespect to Waterford, I want to really get into now. But just on tip, like outside of maybe those decisions that need to be made, I thought they showed enough at the weekend in a very even game that could have went either way. Waterford were probably the better team. You mentioned that yourself. But Tip were thereabouts. Goal chance to level it in injury time. 2 points behind after 71 minutes. Stayed with them. Showed their experience, I thought, late in the game when they were kind of coming back into it. There are lads coming through. Maybe they're not being bled fast enough, but there's enough there in Tip that you wouldn't be like, it's not this kind of end of the world, let's rip it all up and start again kind of sense, is there?
No, absolutely not. There isn't, but people will be saying, oh, you should have tried this guy and you should have tried that guy, and you should be trying younger players. Like, for me, my opinion on that is, okay, there's a difference between wanting the younger players to stand up and the younger players actually standing up. Okay, you have to try them in big games, but maybe Liam just felt as the manager that the best team he had was the team he had on the pitch, and maybe someone else might think differently, that you need younger guys with the way Waterford play with energy and all this. I think foresight is great and hindsight is brilliant and everything, but it's like, how would I compare to? I suppose there'll always be very good rugby players in New Zealand, Mike, and there'll always be very good hurlers in Tipperary, and in a lot of counties the same, because hurling is number one here, for majority of the places, and any the top athletes in every parish, their first dream is play hurling or football for Tipperary, and that's why I think the talent will always be there. Do I feel the talent is there right now? Yeah, I do. But it'll be interesting to see, will these guys get that experience now next year? I suppose they really will have to know, the way the game has gone. Like, like, how would this Waterford team maybe have got on 5 or 6 years ago? You know, I think the game has even changed from that. Like, you know, that like they're zippy, they're high energy, they move the ball quick through the lines. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, you're talking maybe like even look at the 2016 final. You know, it was kind of maybe more intense, a bit more physical than it is now. And so look, time, like the hurling is changing all the time. Right now we're in a game where you use the ball well, possession, you keep possession, you play with a high energy game, and you know that's and Waterford are really good at that. And we just weren't able to match them for that energy and moving the ball through the line the last day. But as you said, I think it'll show the experience we have, the class we had on the pitch. You know, the top quality guys that we'll be talking about for years and years to come, that they were able to stay in a game and be thereabouts when maybe they didn't have the right to, Mike, if that makes sense. But they used the ball well. I suppose they'll look back and they'll look at the few shots they took from maybe 90, 100 yards when they could have got it into the lads as you know, as things that they could have worked on. But again, look, I think the Tipperary lads, will there be change? In my opinion, there will be some change, definitely.
Yeah.
What that will come in the form of guys stepping away or guys coming in, I suppose time will tell. We're getting going with club championship here now in Tipperary, and you know you'll get to see guys, you know, putting their hand up as well for a go next year, and that's what it's all about. I think Brian Cody has a great saying. It's that to be a good county hurler, you must be an outstanding club hurler, and I think that's nail on the head. You really have to be a standout player for your club to be considered for the county, and it'll be interesting to see that over the next couple of months now. Who, you know, a couple of guys put up their hand. But look, I think as you said it, Mike, and you're dead right. I think kudos to Waterford here. They were the better team for the whole game, and really looking forward to going up to Croke Park to see them on Saturday and take on Limerick and see what they've learned from last year playing them. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we leave Tip, then, you know Liam Sheedy pretty well, I'd imagine. Is he the type that he's another man with a busy life outside of the game as well? Like, let's not forget. But is he somebody that will want to go at it again, or and kind of like say, right, you know, 2019 is in the past now. We've had 2 years and not win, and I need to go and do this again with them. Or will he say maybe it's time for someone else to kind of come in and give this a go now that you know, one All Ireland and a second 3-year stint isn't the worst outcome?
I think Liam is the kind of guy that he'll think long and hard about it, and he'll do what he won't. Liam is the kind of guy that it's not what's best for him. It's what's best for the group. And that's what Liam will do. And Liam will have a good think about it, say, am I the right guy to take this group to the next level, to maybe bring in new guys, to understand that maybe some guys are going to want to step away, you know, because they've all the boxes ticked and they're moving on with life. And Liam will have a good long think about that. And if he feels that he is the right guy to take on the group next year, I think, you know, absolutely everyone in Tip would be absolutely delighted with it. But I think it won't be a rash decision anyway, I'll put it like that, Mike, for him or any of his management team. Like, you know, you've Tommy there, Tommy, Owen Kelly, Eamon O'Shea. You know, Eamon is coming up and down from Galway all the time. A lot of people might realise that Eamon lives in Salt Hill near the prom, driving up and down 2, 3, 4 times a week coming up, you know, especially when championships at his height. So there's a guy who gives so much to Tipperary and asks very, very little in return, and has done so much for so many of us and so many of the players there. So it won't be something taken lightly, but I feel the kind of guy that Liam is, just absolutely brilliant guy. And I always say it, from working with him or working around him, you're always a better person after it. So Liam will have a good think about that, to say, is he the right guy or not? And if he feels he is the right guy, well, I think, you know, that everyone with Tip would be very, very happy to see him at the helm again next year. Like.
Yeah. So Waterford then, maybe, you know, Liam Cattle, let's see what happens the rest of this year. Let's see what happens with Liam Sheedy, etc. like that. But everyone's kind of painted him in as a Tipperary manager already, which, you know, might be unfair on his relationship with this group that they have, because it is a special group as well. But when we spoke after the Clare game, you know, we're like, oh, here we go again. Waterford, flat season, good season, flat season, good season. And what they've done to rescue it, I think they got a little bit lucky with having a couple of weeks off. I think they got a little bit lucky with the draw and playing Laois when they could have been, you know, against maybe a better team than Laois. Maybe they could have been caught that day because they didn't play well. But since then, the 2 matches have been absolutely brilliant. You've seen it in the first kind of couple of minutes again. In the same way as we mentioned Shane Bennett's point this week, they started like a house on fire again against Tip, and you're like, Waterford are flying here. And if it wasn't for Shamey's 2 goals in a couple of minutes, they could have been nearly out of sight, you know. So what is it that's changed about this team? Because you almost think now as they go into the Limerick match, they're in a better position than they were going into the All-Ireland final last year against them.
Yeah, I think in the form of say Mikey Beavens, the coach, that he would have learned so much from playing Limerick in Croke Park last year. That I just don't understand people that say that this pitch is the same dimensions as Croke Park, and I think it's absolute bull. I think any player will tell you Croke Park is just a different animal. It plays differently, because of the stadium and everything. It feels like a bigger pitch. It feels like there's more space when you're looking out the field to try and spray a ball into space. It plays a bigger pitch, and that's what the big stadiums do. But I suppose what you said there, Mike, is they're in a better place. That they feel like a different team. For me, they're even a different team than the first round of the championship this year against Clare. They're literally a different team, same group but a different team. If you think about it against Clare, I think they only had 8 from the 15 that started the All Ireland before in 2020. They'd only 8 players out of the 15 that started the All Ireland finals for starting against Clare. So no matter what team you are, even if you were Limerick, and if Limerick get to the All Ireland final this year, and in the first round of championship next year, they want to have 8 of those guys. It's very, very hard to try and push on and get a victory. I take it right against Clare, Mike. Billy Nolan started in goals. We see Sean O'Brien is the goalkeeper now. Okay, against Clare, Shane Fife, Conor Gleeson, and Shane McNulty were down to be the full back line. Okay, now Conor Gleeson was suspended the last day against Tip, so you only had Shane McNulty involved there. Conor Prunty is now back in full back, so that's massive for them. If you think about it, even Caleb Lyons was back corner back that day, Mark and Tony Kelly, right? Their half back line against Clare. Caleb Lyons, Irla Daly, Kevin Moore. Caleb Lyons is the only one still there. Shane Bennett was named at full forward that day. Now he's back centre back. Kieran Bennett didn't even start that day. Now he's wing back and possibly one of their best players of the championship since that day. Midfield, Ozzy Gleeson and Darragh Lyons are midfield. Neither of them are midfield now. Your midfield is now Jamie Barron and you've Peter Hogan midfield. And in the forward line then, as I said, Shane Bennett's gone back into the backs. Desi Hutchinson has been phenomenal since his work rate and everything. Jack Prendergast has given him an energy out at 11. Fagan has now gone to the wing instead of centre forward. You've Stephen Bennett there on the wing forward as well. And you've Neil Montgomery, Mikey Carney. These guys are all coming on. Patrick Curran. So they're a transformed team, Mike. Since the day against Clare, and you can see that the confidence they're playing with it more. But look, for me, one guy is key to all this. Now Prunty's back and everything. Jamie Barron. Jamie Barron is the heartbeat of the team. When Jamie Barron is hurling well, Waterford hurl well. Absolutely brilliant the last day. Absolutely brilliant the day before against Galway. Him back gets everybody else around him ticking, and it's allowing their half back line. There's so much trust there with them, and they have an attacking half back line, scored 5 points from play against Galway. Even the last day as well, Kieran Bennett driving forward with the ball. He was brilliant, he's a joy to watch. But because Barron is there and knows how to play that role so well, he'll cover back, he'll cover the space, he'll be the link player, and he's an all-star form at the moment. I know you have the role in all-stars, Mike, but he's for me, he's a guy that if he puts in any bit of a performance this weekend, he'll be walking up to collect another All-Star award, which would be number 4 for him, I believe, at midfield, which would be phenomenal. So I think a lot of changes, but Jamie Barron, heartbeat of everything going good for him.
Mentioning even the 3 All-Stars that he has, but it feels this year like he's in that 2017 form, which is kind of another level again that he probably hasn't reached since. So it's always good to see a kind of a hurler getting back to sort of the level that we know they can be, or probably surpassing it really if he kind of builds on this over the next game or two. I want to talk, you mentioned the goalkeeper change, and we'll talk obviously about the Tip match in a couple of minutes, but that brilliant save from Sean O'Brien at the end of the game. And in general, we talked about losing, we hear a lot about losing Tyke Burka for Waterford, but losing Stephen O'Keefe, one of the best goalkeepers of his generation. You think about that generation, you think of Anthony Nash, you think of Owen Murphy, obviously still knocking around, maybe Nicky Quaid, but big boots.
Could probably join that conversation too, couldn't he? And Nolan as well from Dublin.
Yeah, exactly. Really good keeper, but you think of big boots to fill, but not even getting that kind of nod at the start, kind of been brought in mid-championship. And then you see Patrick Collins obviously doing such a brilliant job for Cork as well, and we'll talk about them in a few minutes. But it is good to see it's such a pressurised position. You can be waiting so long for your chance there as well. And for these guys to come in and kind of really star, and basically 2 of them having huge shays and winning All-Ireland quarterfinals for their county. It's really brilliant to see, especially replacing such 2 huge figures in Socky and in Nash as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I suppose if we take Patrick Collins, he would have been, waiting in the wings there 4 or 5 years, learning off Anthony Nash all the time. I remember Darren Gleeson was the same with us, learning off Brendan Cummins, waiting to get his chance. When he got it in, he's an all-star goalkeeper almost straight away. As you mentioned there, Sean O'Brien taking over from Billy Nolan. Like, did Billy Nolan do anything too wrong? He probably didn't, but obviously Sean O'Brien is burning it up. Is a top player for his club, De La Salle, as well. So, like, the confidence they have in him, and I think the confidence he has in himself as well. But as you said, we're coming into a new era of goalkeepers, Mike. You're dead right. We even had it in Tip this year. Brian Hogan from Lura was our goalkeeper, all-star goalkeeper a couple of years ago. He got concussed twice this year, couldn't play a championship because of it. Barry Hogan from Kildangan steps in. We all see what Barry did last year. Well, most people see literally had the ball in his hand against Lockmore, quick thinking, the ball goes out, maybe too quick in some people's minds, and Kildangan get the breaks, and they're the county champions for the first time in their history. So, like, Barry Hogan, Sean O'Brien, Patrick Collins, all these guys, even Aidan Murphy is a relatively new guy, unfortunately couldn't play this year for COVID reasons. Like, we are seeing a new era of goalkeepers, and I suppose we're seeing a new type of goalkeepers. Now, we're not going down the Rory Beggan route where they're going to be coming out around the 65, but I think Owen Murphy has transformed that as well, in my opinion, into this almost Manuel Neuer type role where he's very comfortable and the rest of them are very comfortable coming out 20, 30 yards as an extra player, getting the ball and pinging it down the field. And that's what you're seeing more and more nowadays, Mike, is that you're seeing more and more, even in the club, outfield guys becoming goalkeepers. Because why? Because managers are saying, look, he's a good sticks man, and he'll have a bigger boss, he'll be able to shot stop it. And, like, who has the ball in their hand the most every single match? The goalkeeper. You're talking 30, 35 puck-outs where he can do something efficient with it. So to have a guy that's a good sticks person, good striker of the ball, I think we're seeing more and more of guys who are maybe playing outfield with their club becoming inter-county goalkeepers. So yeah, it is a new era of goalkeepers for sure, yeah, and a very exciting one as well. And it's just, I think the work they put in is phenomenal as well. I think Nicky Quaid, we all hear the stories of him being a trainer 2.5 hours beforehand, just going through puck-outs, pinging them, and the distance and the quality of the ball that they're delivering now, it's phenomenal to see, like, really.
Absolutely. And we'll see more with 4 really, really good goalkeepers. Obviously, 2 mentioned, Quaid and Murphy, this weekend. On this weekend, then, Waterford. Like, we know what we're going to expect from Limerick, and we shouldn't, like, you wait a couple of weeks sometimes, you kind of forget what we saw in the second half of the Munster final. You're always thinking about the team you saw last. You sort of, I do anyway, so I can kind of forget sometimes about who they're playing, and Limerick, obviously, phenomenal, but that's probably the best half they've played ever, but it's also miles ahead of everything else they've done this season, and we should remember that they weren't great in the first half. They weren't incredible against Cork, maybe in bursts, and they had a really poor league. But Waterford also, like, they played each other in the Munster final, All-Ireland final last year. I wonder, do we know Limerick have a kind of a much more set style, much more set team? Waterford, you mentioned how they've changed it up even just this year alone. They found something that works, but there is that possibility of moving it again. A lot of players can play in a lot of positions for Waterford. I'm wondering if we'll see something a little bit unexpected from them on Saturday.
Yeah, it's a good question, Mike. I suppose I know you're getting your GAA phrases there, but one of the best ones I've heard was you're talking about a match. He said there's a match like this where it's so close. And Kilkenny Cork as well. He says there's like a deaf dog. It's hard to call. So that is that. You can add that one in. But it's just hard to know. I think, I was talking about Mike and Beavens earlier and what they would have learned, again, maybe playing the All-Ireland final against Limerick last year up in Croke Park, and how Limerick are a different animal up in Croke Park, like, as well. And they use every inch of space that they can up there. And they're probably the best team at doing that, the way they suck the half forward line out the field, and your half back line have a choice to make. Do we go, do we stick, or will we follow? If you follow, they'll hit the space in front of Shamie Flanagan, Peter Casey, Aaron Gallan. If you stay, they'll let Garrod, Hegarty and Tom Morrissey take on the ball and shoot from distance. And that was very evident last year. I think in the semi-final and the final last year, Hegarty and Tom Morrissey scored something like, I think it was 22 points between them from play. Yeah. So, there's 2 guys who love playing in Croke Park and know exactly where the posts are. So are we going to see something different from Waterford? Yeah, I think we definitely will see something. I think they're definitely going to be maybe much more attack-minded. And they're going to really go at this because why? Because it worked against Galway, it worked against Tipperary. Their game is high energy, their game is attacking, and they start that attack mostly from their half back line. And even the way Shane Bennett took on that score against Galway the very first day, it was a message of intent to say, look, we're going at this. We're not sitting back. So I think Waterford will go at it. They'll go at it hard. They'll be high energy. And, when lads are spent, they now have a bench of the likes of Patrick Curran, Neil Montgomery, Mikey Carney, Mikey Kiley, these guys to come in and inject more energy into the thing. Yeah. So I think they will go at it more maybe than what we've seen last year against them. And, as we said, this is without so many top players like Tadhg de Burka, Stephen O'Keefe. So we can't talk Tadhg de Burka. He's gone now. We can't mention him. Stephen has walked away. But even Iarla Daly getting injured. A lot of people forget that. Iarla Daly is injured. So Shane Bennett is filling in the 6th role and is playing he's doing a great job at it. But it's the understanding at it. So I think, to answer your question, Mike, will we see something different? I think we'll see something different in regards that you'll see a more attacking-minded Waterford side than maybe what you would have seen in the All-Ireland final last year, where they were maybe weary of what was going on, whereas now they might trust themselves a bit more and say, let's go at this and let's see what Limerick's response will be to that.
Yeah. Paul Tierney asking if you think Austin Gleeson will be in defence or attack. I think you probably answered that as you want your best lads in a more attacking situation if they're going to be going for it in that way. And there's a part of me that wonders, are Waterford better off meeting Limerick in this? I know it's such a cliche, but for Waterford especially, you're better off beating Limerick in a semi than a final, where there's so much baggage on the finals with them and everything else, and knowing what happened last year. And if Limerick can be caught, maybe it is, the second last day rather than the last day.
Yeah, and if you even think about it, since Limerick produced that tour de force in the second half down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, since that, Waterford have bet Galway, bet Waterford, bet Tipperary down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh as well. Momentum, I don't think they'll be tired. I think because of the group and the age profile of the group, they're a relatively young group. They will recover much quicker than maybe like a Tipperary team or something who are a bit older or like that. And they'll be full of energy. They'll be buzzing. I suppose, to answer Paul's question, where do I think Austin Gleeson will be playing? I feel that Waterford could play Austin Gleeson, give him a kind of a role, around the half forward line where Tip made a bit of hay, like Jason Ford did in the first half. He's able to pick points from distance, and Austin has that in the locker that he can do that. And they might try and pinpoint that to say, right, if Limerick do want to sit, that maybe we get Ozzy out around the ball, around the midfield, half forward area, and get him popping scores from distance and try and suck them out. And then what that allow us to do is maybe hit the space in front of Desi Hutchinson and let him, with his pace with the space up in Croke Park, try and take on, whoever he'll be marking. It'll be very interesting. I think Sean Finn will probably be detailed to mark Desi Hutchinson. They would see him as a main target man and try and take him on and see, look, how are you for pace? Because he had a fantastic battle with Barrett the last day. Unbelievable. And I think Barrett and Sean Finn are in the same mould of a type of defender. Real tough, real tenacious, great touch. Will want to play in front. So just so many matchups. Even Jack Fagan, will he mark Kyle Hayes? Will he mark Declan Hannon? Will he mark Diarmuid Burns with his aerial ability and what he did in the semi-final against Kilkenny last year, snapping that ball and setting up the goal? So I think it'll be fascinating. I think who will mark Jamie Barron for Limerick? Will O'Donoghue get that leadership role of marking him, which he could do? For me, I've often said about Will O'Donoghue, Mike, I think he's the right Keane of the team. He does everything very well, does the simple things very well. So he might be detailed to try and curtail Jamie Barron. And if he does, it will go a long, long way, to try and get the victory for the Limerick lads.
Yeah. If I was just thinking of the 2 tip goals in the first half the last day, and I'm thinking of the best scores Waterford got last weekend, where they've got such a brilliant ability to be just running off a man in possession, and be it through a scrap or through a pass, that they're there in full flight picking up the ball and bursting through. And you think that obviously happened deeper for the tip goals against Limerick. I'm just wondering, is the current way Waterford are playing suits the possible very, very slight deficiencies in Limerick's defence, or is that just reaching?
Yeah, it's hard to know. It's hard.
We'll know on Saturday.
It's just so hard because we're here talking about Limerick, and we thought they were okay against Cork, won by 8 points. They hurled from 1 half against Tip, and they're Munster champions. And are we going to see the complete performance from them? Are they waiting for Croke Park, unknowns to themselves, to get back up to the business end of the season for this complete team performance, like what they did in the All-Ireland final last year? I mean, even what they did in what they've done for the last few years, to be fair to them, they were a poor decision away from being in the final in 19, so 18, 19, 20. They like Croke Park and they play well in Croke Park, so maybe they're waiting for this complete team performance, which maybe we just haven't seen from them for a 60, 65-minute period at the weekend. So, like, to answer your question, are Waterford set up to try and take them on? I think Waterford are full of confidence at the moment and they've great momentum behind them, and they will feel, and Mikey Beavens will feel as the coach, that they are set up. And like, will they do something a little bit different? Sure, they'll have to, as the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. So there will have to be some kind of trick up the sleeve for the Waterford lads to take on Limerick and try and play a game where they get Limerick to change, rather than the way it is now, Mike, is everybody plays a game on Limerick's terms and they have to change, try and suit them, so.
Yeah, I think you explained it in the way I was trying to ask it arseways, but if Death Dog or not, call it.
I just think Limerick are awesome. I really, really do. And I just think if they click as a unit, and even if 11 or 12 of them play well, their bench will come on and finish the job. So for me, it's going to be Limerick, maybe by 4 or 5 points.
Yeah. You have to go with the team that are at their best, could be unbeatable. You have to go for it, don't you? You have to think that it could be them on the day. But we're half an hour in here. We haven't even talked about Cork and Kilkenny. It's like, there's so much. I think there's probably less there. For me, with Cork is like, we'll probably take more out of the Clare game than we will out of the Dublin game. No disrespect to Dublin, I think they did a good job. But one thing that they have found through the qualifiers, or whatever they're called these days, is probably cemented a little bit of trust in a lot of the players that Kingston probably brought through during the league. That, they scored a lot of goals and they played some exciting hurling and they were up and down. And you're just wondering, come championship time, will Jack O'Connor get real time? Will Barrett, all these guys, coming through, will even just positional changes, like using Luke Meade the way they've been using him this year, that we might not have seen before. So even experienced guys, goalkeeper we mentioned already, I feel that there's a little bit more trust there now, and there's a kind of a sense of these guys this is the team we have, and we'll play to their strengths and we'll go out and give it everything,
Yeah, like it's just looking back through the results, like down through the years, like say Cork's last win was in 2013 in Thurles today, like over Kilkenny in the championship. If you remember that day, I think Henry got sent off that day actually.
Yeah.
And in the last time they played in Croke Park 2019 quarterfinal, Cork scored 319, but 310 came from Horgan. Now, I think Cork are so different since that, in that there isn't the same reliance on Pat Horgan, nowhere near the same reliance on Pat Horgan scoring wise, compared to what there was in 2019 when he scored 310 and that unbelievable goal off his knees. Like, Cork don't need Pat Horgan to score 310 now. They just need him to, tipping him in a few points. He takes watching no matter what he does. Even the score he got against the last day, great image of it there, off the knees as well. He's just one of those players that, it's like, knowing Father Ted, where he tells Dougal go out and mind the corner flag. Like, if Pat Horgan goes out to mind the corner flag, he still takes watching and someone has to go over and stand beside him. That's the type of player he is. That's the genius of a hurler that he is. And I thought he was brilliant the last day, So, but they're not dependent on him, And the other thing for me is the character they've shown in the last two games for me. I was in at the game against Clare. Clare came back at him, went a point up Diarmuid Ryan. Cork's response was to score the next 1-5 in the game.
Yeah.
Outscored Clare 1-5 to a point. Now, obviously, coming into stoppage time, Tony gets a penalty. But if that was Cork teams of before, they might have just fell apart and say, oh, this is us now, we're out again, And their response was brilliant. The last day against Dublin clipped off 4 points in a row, was starting to bring it back in. The next 4 scores after that, then Cork get them. And they just kill off the game as a contest. So what I'm trying to say here is Cork, we're seeing a character in the Cork team that maybe we haven't seen. And we're seeing a work rate and a hunger. And, it's typified by Tim O'Mahony, the way he's, first of all, he's been a real tenacious defender. The way he's going forward, the goal he got against the last day. I thought he was brilliant against Limerick even. I thought he did a great job, marking Tom Morrissey that day, and was sending out a message, was giving a few dunce, and it was saying, look, we're not the soft touch you think you are. I think Downey at 3 has been phenomenal. I think, their 2 cornerbacks, especially Sean O'Donoghue, who has been immense, like marked 3 guys against Clare, was brilliant the last day against Dublin as well and did everything right. So there's that tightness and that bit of steel in the Cork defence that we maybe haven't seen before. Luke Meade is doing a lot of work midfield, allowing Fitzgibbon to get up and down more. But up front, there isn't that reliance on Horgan. And I think that's massive for him. But all being said, Cody's record in semi-finals is looking at it. I think this is his 21st. He's only lost 3. Lost to Galway in 01, Galway 05, and lost to Waterford last year. Cody knows how to win semi-finals, and as we were talking, Mike, beforehand, nobody's given him any credit for being an All-Ireland semi-final. They're giant league champions. They're Leinster champions, defeated Wexford after extra time, defeated Dublin in the Leinster final. They're probably wondering, what do we have to do before we get a bit of credit here? But I think that suits this group and Cody down to the ground. They're coming in it. I'm sure the group is buzzing as well. And lads that, even look at James Maher, not really a household name. Phenomenal last day on Danny Sutcliffe, I thought, in the Leinster final. And the bench as well. They're probably finishing the games with stronger than what they're starting them because of the bench they have. So, and I think it's 2004 is the last time Kilkenny lost to Cork in Croke Park. So look, I'm sure all these things will be mentioned going around heads and everything, but it's just going to be real interesting tie. For me, Mike, I just feel Kilkenny, they're just so good at semi-final stage. Cody is so good at them. As I said, 21, only lost 3 of them. And I think there's a great group there and a great panel there. And I know it's even enough, with the bookies wise, I know you're talking about that, but for me, I do give Kilkenny the edge in this, I really do,
I think you're right about them not getting enough credit. I also don't think maybe we're talking about them enough in general. I don't mean us specifically, but he's built another team there, kind of quietly. If you think that Conor Fogarty, Killian Buckley, Walter Walsh, you're saying that maybe they're the strongest players coming up, but they're all coming off the bench, and the guys who are starting for them, they've kind of quite everybody, just if you're looking from afar, you're still thinking, TJ Reid and, 1 or 2 more there. And, there's lads coming through like Mullen maybe or something like that. But if you think of Donnelly, if you think of Cody, that there's a serious forward line there that's right. They haven't done it yet, but you're thinking talent-wise and potential-wise, that's up there with the forward line of the team of 10, 15 years ago. Obviously it's a big step between potential and actually getting the job done. And then in the backs, I feel like it's the same thing. And you think of the form of somebody like, Hugh Lawler, Paddy Deegan, these guys have been there for a while. Owen Murphy's probably the best goalkeeper in the country. But there's guys there, I just think, that are just there isn't really weak links in the Kilkenny team. I think for the last 5-6 years, or well, maybe it's a bit less than that, they've won an All-Ireland in that time. But at the same time, you're trying to think this isn't what they were because they're carrying maybe 1 or 2. I feel like at this stage now, there's 20 guys who are going to make a difference, are going to step up to the mark. They can afford 1 or 2 non-performances because they're all good enough.
Yeah. How could I make a comparison for you, so Mike, right? 10, 15 years ago, right? And you step onto the field and you look at the Kilkenny forward line, and it's Eddie Brennan, Henry Shefflin, Owen Larkin, Richie Power, Taggy Fogarty. I'm leaving out some greats there now, right? Okay. So they probably had you bet before the ball was thrown in. Whereas nowadays people feel they're stepping onto a field and they look around and go, right, Mossy Keohane, right? He doesn't have too many All-Stars. Donnelly, Owen Cody, Adrian Mullen. Okay, obviously TJ's going to take mine. And next thing, they just blow you out of the water. The comparison is that years ago, there might have been a massive fear factor because of who you were playing against. Mick Fennelly midfield, Tommy Welsh, JJ Delaney, Brian Hogan, Jackie Tyrrell. How do you break these lads down? Whereas now teams are going in and going, hold on a second, these are only young lads. Some of them, James Maher, don't know much about him. Blanchfield, don't know much about him. Hugh Lawler, don't know too much about him. And next thing, Kilkenny, they're going out and they're winning consistently, in the league, in the championship. So for me, that's where we go back to maybe the credit thing, or maybe there's not the same fear factor, but teams are finding out after 10 or 15 minutes, this is a serious group, lads. We have to give these lads a bit more respect, and they are gaining that respect. But I suppose the respect that the group, that the generation, the greatest hurling team of all time, in my opinion, had, they were getting it before the ball is thrown in. Whereas now it's taking teams maybe 20, 25 minutes to realise, geez, lads, Owen Cody can win his own ball. Adrian Mullen can win his own ball. Mossy Keohane can win ball. John Donnelly can win ball. Do you know what I mean? And it's nearly too late then. But I think they are gaining that respect. To get to the level of their predecessors 10 years ago. I suppose the only way they will get there, I suppose, is by lifting Lee McCarthy a few times. But I think as a group, Mike, I think they're a serious group. I think the Hugh Lawler one specifically, thought he was immense in the Leinster final. The question for me was, would he have been as instrumental maybe if Ronan Hayes could play the game, because of the type of player Ronan Hayes is. And I think there's a big test coming for him now this weekend. And will he be detailed to Mark Patrick Horgan? Will he be detailed maybe to Mark Shane Kingston? Be interesting to see the kind of challenge that's going to come at him at the weekend and how he'll handle that and elevate his status to one of the top fullbacks in the country even further.
Yeah, and that's what Cork have is a kind of an options that maybe Kilkenny haven't faced yet in the forwards. There's the question here from Paul as to who will mark Jack O'Connor, that he's a joy to watch and might expose weak links in the Kilkenny defence. And that's, you think of Kingston, you think of O'Connor, you think of Horgan, all different matchups for the full back line to worry about. And, Wexford probably have that talent-wise, but we're probably playing Rory O'Connor inside in his own for most of that match. And look, they absolutely caused Kilkenny problems. And then Dublin were, they were just so impotent by the fact of everything that happened before the match. There is, as we've talked about Cork and what they have in their attack, but it is a variation as well that could kind of cause Kilkenny some problems.
Yeah, I think the Jack O'Connor one is very interesting because Jack O'Connor is the type of player that, to look at him, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's picked up 3 yellow cards in the last 2 games, and he's well able to mind himself and he's well able to give it out if he has to, which goes away from the traditional corner forward maybe we're used to seeing, small, nippy, Shawnee McGrath, Joe Dean type of guy. That Jack O'Connor is the kind of guy to say, lads, get the ball into me, I don't mind. And his first choice is always, I want a goal. I want a goal. And he's going head down. Now, if the point is the best thing to do, he'll take it. But the first thing he wants to do is get it in his hand and go. So I think maybe Kilkenny are looking at that to say, right, who do we have pedals-wise here to keep up with him? And for me, I thought that maybe someone like James Maher, with the job he did and Danny Sutcliffe following him around, athletic ability-wise, he could be a guy that they might look to say, look, there's going to be a bit of space in front of you, but we have the confidence in you to do it. You're going to go out, you're going to win the ball, and maybe that'll allow Pádraig Welch up to do a bit more hurling and a bit more, distribution of the ball. But, I think Jack O'Connor has been just revelation there for him. We all knew what he was doing with Sarsfields there the last few years, underage for Cork as well. But he's really, really stepped up this year. And just the way he even rounded Rory Hayes even, Rory Hayes, one of the top cornerbacks in the country, just rounded him, left him for dead off the hurling, bang, top of the net. Next ball he got, put a tap over the bar, no, I want another goal. So that'll be very interesting to see who picks him up. And maybe it will be a James Maher type figure, because I feel maybe Paddy Deegan is more of that raw type defender, but he mightn't have the pedals for Jack O'Connor in the space that is Croke Park. So be very interesting to see what way Cork play it. Will they leave him inside and try and isolate him with one of the Kilkenny guys, and who Cody will detail to pick him up as well. So look, the matchups around the field will be absolutely fascinating as well. And just the Kilkenny midfield, Mike, I know we're running out of time probably.
No, you're fine. Take your time. We're not on the clock.
I'm looking at the Kilkenny midfield. There are 2 midfielders have been taken off. Both midfielders taken off for the last 2 games. Their midfield has never started and finished the game. Now, maybe midfielders can't do that, but I'm looking at Darragh Fitzgibbon and Luke Meade, who are starting and finishing all the games for Cork. They're a great partnership. So that's an area of the field that Cork could look to make hay from as well, with Fitzgibbon maybe chipping in with 2 or 3 points for play, which he does like.
Yeah, Jack Nolte saying 50-50. I fancy Kilkenny's physicality might attitude might wear Cork down 2 or 3 points, but Cork have the talent, no doubt. On the Meade and Fitzgibbon finishing every game midfield, it brings up a point. We talked all the way through the qualifiers how difficult the route it is this year with the condensed championship, playing every single week. There's a momentum there for sure, absolutely, but we've seen it that Clare fell on the 3rd week. Waterford are they're going for 4 weeks now, but I suppose I don't mean to be disparaging to Laois. It's still a championship game and they still gave it everything, but I thought they were tired at the end of the game, but it still wasn't quite the top level, I suppose, in the way that Cork have come through both the Clare match and the Dublin match. And I just wonder, is that this week with Limerick and Kilkenny having very, very normal schedule as opposed to every other team who've been just like flat out, how much that's going to come into things? Yeah,
I suppose, look, freshness. Yeah, I suppose it will. Like I thought Cork won the match pulling up against Dublin the last day. I don't think they would have suspended anywhere as much energy as they had to try and get the Clare result out of the way. So I think that they'll be fine going into it. I think Waterford, might be a bit more lagged, but as I said already, I think they're so the age profile of the team, of the group. I think that they'll be buzzing for it. I don't think it will be an issue with them. I think that they have it in the legs, that they would have recovered very, very well. And recovery was the main word that Liam Cahill used after the Tip game, is we have to recover. And that's, I'd say they hardly even pucked the ball this week. maybe might do a sharp session maybe tonight or tomorrow night, Mike, in preparation for Saturday. But like, I suppose you imagine what was going on in A versus B in Limerick and into the Kilkenny camps the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We're talking about panels. I'd say they're absolutely hopping off each other. Like, I mean, you look at like David Reedy, Carl O'Neill, these kinds of guys in Limerick, Pat Ryan, I'm sure they're saying, like, what do we have to do to get on the team here? And then you're looking like, well, the guy that's keeping you out is Peter Casey, who scored 5 points from play the last day. So let's see what you've got. Here's your point. Here's your chance to prove. The Kilkenny A versus B games are legendary at this stage. Like, I'm sure Wally Walsh is there wondering, geez, Brian, what do I have to do here? Like, I'm one of your tried and trusted down through the years, but I'm sure he's saying, look, I want to finish the game with my best team. But look, if you're going well enough, we've seen Cody reward players year in, year out who are going well in training. So, you can't get the same buzz or the same feel as championship action, but I'm sure Limerick Kilkenny are trying to have as close as they can internally in A versus B the last 2 weeks. So look, I think Waterford will be fine, and I do honestly feel that Cork won the match pulling up against Dublin, that energy wise they'll be fine as well for the weekend. Like,
I want to stop you on the A versus B games though, because I'm sure you've been there, you've gone through the Munster route and you've waited around for the semi-final. It used to be worse than it is now. Kilkenny well used to it, and Limerick are kind of getting there as well. And like, I think it's about kind of like, you'll be there at the end of the game if you're still in it because you'll have the fresher legs, but it's about starting at that full intensity when a team has been going through it. But how much are they? You can't recreate championship, but also you don't want to go out and kill each other and put like a full. You don't want to put too much out of your legs either. Like, you want to use your break for you. I'm fascinated by those A versus B games. You talk about them being legendary, but I kind of feel like nobody actually. They are quite literally legendary. We don't really know anything about them. No. Are they full on matches? Are they like? Is it score kept? How does it work?
Yeah, most of the top team, the top teams, Mike, would take them very, very serious. From my own personal experience and from talking to other guys from other counties, how serious is it taken? Well, it'll be behind closed doors anyway. First of all, it might be, say, in Tipperary's case, in Simple Stadium. In Cork's case, might be down at Park Equive. Kenny's place is obviously Nolan Park, Limerick Gaelic grounds. Closed doors, nobody's in there watching. The top managers who are always on about the 1%ers, they'll try and replicate everything, before the game. Like, say if it's an All-Ireland final, you might see teams actually doing the parade beforehand. They might be lining up Mariette to meet the president. You hear of all these things so that you're making it more familiar and more familiar. Some groups might try and recreate the noise of Croke Park as well through PA systems. And this goes on in other sports as well. And you see the top managers and the top coaches trying to do all these 1%ers. And the game itself then is ref properly. There'd probably be umpires at the game. The ref would probably be, a top inter-county referee or, a top inter-county referee from your own county. And it's done to the T, The water breaks will come into it. There'll be exactly a minute. They'll come out. The puckouts won't be allowed to be taken too quickly. So I think it's a test. It's a sign of how good the group is in the A versus B games, that a lot of the time, if the group is really ticking and really pouring, you'll find that the Bs are nearly beating the A team. And I think that's a sign of teams. Manager wants to start with one team, but probably wants to finish with his best team. And Jim Gavin always used that terminology, didn't he, of starters and finishers. No subs anymore, starters and finishers. And I think that's what you have nowadays with top inter-county panels, hurling, football, ladies football, camogie, that you will see more often than not, the best team will actually finish the game rather than start the game. The starting team will do a job, 45, 46 minutes. Right, let's get the guys on who are absolutely lifting inside and training, who are pushing these guys to the max to be as good as they can. And I see it there a lot, that a really good group will have their B team pushing their A team all the way week in, week out. And that's, as John Kiley says it as well, as all the top managers say, the reason they're so good is because of the guys who weren't even hardly able to tug out today. And that's what makes a great group. Like,
yeah, that's fascinating stuff. For some reason, I always just assume, even when you're reading it in autobiographies and all, I'm still thinking of it as just like end the train and old school kind of line up here, lads, and we'll play 15 minutes and the manager throws it in the middle himself. I think that might be a bit a bit dated.
No, absolutely not. No, and lads are absolutely hopping off each other. But as I said, a good sign of a group as well. It's left on the pitch. Lads will do what they have for the group, but that's it. When the game is over, that's it. There's no bad feelings carried over the white lines.
So if we were to, when we talk at 12 o'clock on Monday on the show, you're thinking that we're probably looking at a Limerick Kilkenny final. If we were to call the Death Dog.
If it's a hard one to call, like the Death Dog, yeah. Look, I would personally. I feel Limerick Kilkenny double Haven't been going great now with the tips at the present.
Waterford and Cork will be delighted.
I have more losses than wins, with lads at the moment. So look, I just feel Limerick are coming in a good place. I haven't seen the full team performance from them yet for 65 minutes. I think it's coming in Croke Park, and I think Kilkenny, serious group. They know how to win semi-finals. This group knows how to win semi-finals. Fascinating to see what TJ is going to do. Will he be in the half-forward line, or will Brian Cody say in and top of Downey? Let's see what he's made of. And will Sean O'Donoghue pick up on Cody as well? Looking forward to that one so much. So, but I just feel Kilkenny are just going about edge it. So Limerick Kilkenny double. Maybe everyone should back Waterford Cork double. That's the case. So look, that's what I'm thinking for the weekend, Mike.
Lovely. Well, listen, it's Waterford and Limerick on Saturday at 5 o'clock, Croke Park. You'll be there on RT radio commentary. And then on Sunday, we've got Cork and Kilkenny, the old firm, the classic lineup, 3:30 on Sunday. So can't wait for that. Fascinating insight as always, Shane McGrath. We'll talk to you Monday. Thanks a million.
Cheers, Mike. Thanks a million.
Thanks again to Shane. Don't forget, if you're enjoying the show, please do download and subscribe. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on the podcast, obviously please do so, and leave a comment with us as well. We'll be back on Monday, as I said, with Shane, and we'll also look ahead to the football semi-finals with Darren O'Sullivan. He'll be joining us then. Up next, or in a couple of minutes, we're going to guess the handicaps for both groups of semi-finals, hurling and football, with Gary and PJ. But before we do that, Finch, who's been guiding us through the GAA summer with his little pop videos, is going to bring us 22 phrases that every GAA fan needs to know.
If you want to be considered a true GAA fan, then you have to get deeply invested into the minefield of GAA phraseology. You need to learn the lingo, know the lingo, use the lingo, be the lingo, become the lingo. We got 22 GAA phrases that you gotta know. Around the panel, a term reserved for a club player called up to county level but never stuck around. Wiry, reserved for a corner forward that is impossible to keep tabs on. The town end, because no matter how rural a pitch, there's always an urban centre behind one of the goals. Third man tackle, you might think it's 3 lads in a challenge, but no. It's an off-the-ball tackle. Dirty ball, when it's in the centre of the park and you don't know who's in possession. There's just bodies on bodies. One hand, the exclamation of all players when they have a foul given against them. Two hands, the exclamation of supporters when lads go up to try catch a ball with only one hand. Ratified, only ever used in the English language when lads are appointed as manager of a GAA team. Post, the only heckle allowed for goalkeepers when lads are lining up to take a free. Schmozzle, handbags, a bit of carry-on, adding more and it becomes shameful scenes. Parallelogram, formal way of saying rectangle, basically just the box. The square, that's the small parallelogram, or rectangle, in the box. Are you confused? And other, a term managers put in the team sheet when they hadn't thought of who was going to play at the weekend. Top of the left or the right, this is just another term for a corner forward. On the 40 describes a centre half forward, but much like most of these terms, doesn't really make sense. In shy, a waterlogged or damaged pitch due to adverse weather conditions. One is an exalted exclamation from a supporter when things just aren't going their way. A good man to break up play is a compliment given to a lad who puts in effort but is absolutely muck. Shown the line. This is just another way to say someone received a red card. Physicality, just that one word that's used by traditionalists to say that the game's gone soft. A coming team, a group who have ran big boys close or have had underage success in the past. A dummy team is a team named during the week by a manager even though he knows for sure it won't start at the weekend.
Okay, brilliant stuff from Finch there as always. Call a deaf dog not in there, unfortunately, but or like a deaf dog, hard to call. I can't believe I messed it up after we used it 50 times there.
I can't believe you left out spiritual leader. I mean, like it's.
He only had time for 22, PJ. I know you've probably done a 67 list somewhere before.
76, Vic. I think you'll find the list of 76 phrases on.
PJ and Gary are with us to guess the handicaps as usual. We're going to do this is the last guess the handicaps until we do the All Ireland finals. So we're going to get both of them out of the way for the next 2 weeks. So we'll have we'll guess the handicap for the All Ireland finals, and we'll have a few other little things in there as well when we come back in a couple of weeks. But we're going to get the football and hurling done this week, lads. Gary is the champ. Here's the fixtures. It's Limerick, Waterford, Kilkenny, Cork, as we already talked about. But what a football lineup, because we haven't had a chance to talk about it. Dublin versus Mayo, Kerry versus Tyrone. You couldn't have asked for more. I have to say, I am buzzing for all 4 of these games.
Yeah, PJ is the champ, actually, by the way, Mick. Don't get that mixed up.
Did I win 4-0?
I thought you won it back last week, Gary.
No, he hammered me last week, didn't he? 4-0.
Yeah, that was the week before, wasn't it? PJ, you must know.
I can only remember my 4-0 victory.
Okay, well,
I've got the type of mindset. I don't remember the losses, you know.
Yeah, I have a tendency to dream about the guess the handicap slot as well, so maybe I mix it up. Okay, well, then PJ, for this incredible round of fixtures, we're going to go in order. So we're going to start with Saturday's game between Waterford and Tip. It's been confirmed that PJ is the champ, and that I as always get to the end of the show and completely mess up this slot. But PJ, you are the champ, which means you get the choice of whether you want to go first for Tip and Waterford, or whether you want to let Gary have the honour.
I'll go first for Tip and Waterford.
Okay, you'll go first.
Waterford and Limerick, I think you mean.
Yes, I do. Waterford and Limerick, yeah, Tip are out.
I cannot.
No more mistakes. I've drawn a line under it here.
Long day. I can't wait for this game. I think this is going to be a cracking game. I think we'll probably see the All-Ireland champions from this game. Well, I thought Waterford were excellent against Tipperary in the last round. 3:25 in play
it's astonishing.
Just sensational. It really was. They've got threats all over the pitch now. Like they had 13 scorers in all. 4 players scoring 1-3. They look like they've found like a midfield partner for Barron now, and Peter Hogan. Like after trying out several players there. Looks like there's a set position for Austin Leeson, I hope. I'd like to see him kind of staying around where he is there at the moment anyway. I think that Limerick will be favourites, but I'm really interested to see what Waterford do. I think they could really, really give him a game. Obviously like a replay last year's All-Ireland final. Limerick, Waterford won this game in the league. Wouldn't be sure how much that means. Like 4th week out in a row for Waterford. I think that like it's definitely a factor but they're such a young team, and they've been getting better. Like they really have been getting better, especially the last 2 games. I didn't think much of them after that Laois game. I mean, I was just thought, well, they hadn't really built on last year, but against Galway and Tipperary, they were superb. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what they can do in this game. But yeah. I think Limerick will be favourites. I'm going to say Limerick -5. Actually, can I change that? Limerick -4. Limerick -4.
Okay, Limerick -4. Yeah, like in a weird way, like they played in the Munster final last year, they played in the All-Ireland final, now they're playing in the semi-final. It's like Waterford have to win this one, and it has the potential to be an incredible rivalry because they're young enough to challenge Limerick on. But if I kind of feel like if Limerick win this again, Waterford are in a weird way, despite being probably the story of the season. By the time we're looking back on it, they'll be kind of a non-factor. This is a huge game for Waterford.
Yeah, and whoever wins between Kilkenny and Cork will have a bit of dressing room wall material there from PJ Brown anyway to say that the winner is definitely coming for this semi-final. But yeah, like you're saying, because Waterford are a great story and everyone's like praising Waterford, but then you kind of get the feeling too that I'm not saying nobody's going to give them a chance, but I'd say there'd be very few people that would actually tip them to beat Limerick this weekend. And like, to be fair, it is pretty much impossible to back against them because we've seen what they do to teams, even when they don't play well necessarily for half the game or more. So I think obviously Limerick will be favourites. -4 is probably about right. I'd say -5 I'll go for, just because I think that's more likely than -3.
Maestro, please reveal. For those listening on the podcast and not on the video, it is Limerick -5. PJ nailed it and then changed his mind, forcing Gary into the right answer. So you should have done there. You should have let Gary go first.
Probably.
Yeah.
We don't know. Gary could have gone -5. I'd say Gary would have gone -5.
I don't know what I would have went for, to be honest, PJ. I'm holding my cards close to my chest.
Limerick -5 is high, I would say, but you probably think fair. And again, if Limerick are winning, late in the game, you think there is a potential for them to stretch away there, given it'll be very hard for Waterford with the 4 weeks in a row to keep the legs going in the last 5 minutes if it doesn't feel like the game's on. So that's something I think for people to watch out for as well. Cork and Kilkenny then, Gary, you're up with this one. Cork, 3 weeks in a row for them. As Shane was mentioned there a few minutes ago, they were probably pulling up against Dublin at the end. But Kilkenny have been waiting in the wings since a fairly handy Leinster final win against Dublin. But we kind of forget that, like, you know, the last time we seen them in full flow, it seems like so long ago now, especially in a short season, was that brilliant match in extra time against Wexford.
Yeah. Kilkenny and Cork in the latter stages of the All-Ireland Championship. It's like 2005 all over again. But it's an interesting game because
they didn't play in 2005, though. 2004. Galway shocked Kilkenny in one of Brian Cody's 3 All-Ireland semi-final defeats ever.
Well, there, I should have been listening closer to Shane, but
I don't
know. I think this game's kind of been overlooked just because of the fact that the other one looks so exciting, and like I think a lot of people are kind of presuming that the winners of the All-Ireland will come from that one, like PJ. But I don't know, with this game, like you just can't see Kilkenny losing an All-Ireland semi-final, can you? Like to Cork against whatever, but like I know Waterford lost, like caught them on the hop a little bit last year, but I think they're going to be right up for this. And Brian Cody, you know, like Shane was saying, 18 All-Ireland finals lost or semi-finals lost 3. So I don't know. I think Kilkenny will be favourites. Handicap, I'm going to say Kilkenny -4.
Okay. Kilkenny -4. To be fair to Gary, PJ, just because I had that dig, it was like that was the only year of 4 that they didn't play each other in the All-Ireland final. So you're right in that it was kind of 2005-ish all over again, but not quite that exact year.
Fair enough. I'll take that.
Yeah. I think that I actually find this a very hard game to call. I think Cork have improved, not to the same level that Waterford, that Cork have improved through the year. Not that they haven't taken that same jump that Waterford have taken in the last few games, but they still look good. Like the defense is playing quite well. Patrick Collins, the keeper, like debut season, I think he's starting to. He's looking like he's like a good replacement for Anthony Ashe long term. His puck outs have definitely improved. I think he's pulled off a couple of good saves here and there. Like in defense, like O'Donoghue, Tim O'Mahony, or Downey, they're all playing well. Like that game against Dublin, like I wasn't that impressed by them. Like I do wonder if Dublin had Owen O'Donnell in defence, like they might not, those goals might not have been scored. I'm not so sure. Like Owen O'Donnell is probably the best fullback in the game, and like you're missing him. He's such a big loss for Dublin. Like Kilkenny is interesting. I think they're like still like evolving a little bit. You were talking about how they slowly bring these kind of new players onto the panel, and maybe you don't even realize that. I mean, like they've got that evolution as well, that every team is kind of adding that scorer from the half back line now. You have to have threats everywhere, and Kilkenny have kind of added, like James Maher, who didn't even start against Wexford, came off the bench, scored 2 points, scored 3 points against Dublin. That's like another interesting step, I think, for Kilkenny. I think Gary went way too high here. I think it's probably closer to like Kilkenny -1, but I'm gonna play the game on you here, Gary, and I'm gonna take Kilkenny -3.
I had a word with Shane before because I actually think this is a talking point, but I had to say, look, we can allude to it, but we can't give it away because the lads are waiting. It is, PJ's going to get the point. It is a scratch game. It is you could get the two teams are both evens to win the game. You can get Cork -1 on a kind of an alternative handicap, but it is, for all intents and purposes, a no handicap game, which I have to say, and that's what we're talking about, underrating Kilkenny with Shane, is like, I don't know if Cork have done enough for that yet. Now we'll see how it goes. You could even tip Cork to win and still, I think, expect Kilkenny to be favourites, you know. And I think in some ways, they deserve it. So be interesting to see whether that's, what kind of a prophecy that is. 2 great games to look forward to at the weekend. If you missed earlier on the show, if you're joining us live, Shane McGrath and myself looked ahead to both of them for a good 45-minute conversation that you can go back and listen to once this show is finished, or you can search the podcast, just search GAA embedded at balls.ie, and you will find it there. Now, onto the football, lads. We've got a bit of breathing space before these games come. Football teams get rests that hurling teams don't, and in fact, 2 weeks off for the likes of Kerry and Mayo, which is kind of unbelievable in this championship. But Dublin versus Mayo, Kerry versus Tyrone, it's the semi-finals I think everybody wanted in a way. And it's no offence to, you might have wanted Galway to win their individual kind of final, you might have wanted Monaghan to win, but when it comes to the actual overall picture, these are the fixtures we want. Dublin and Mayo, PJ, it's 1-1 here. You know, this is last year's All-Ireland final, many years All-Ireland final. We are talking about different teams, though, than 16 and 17 when this was the most thrilling rivalry in Irish sport. We're away from that. You know, they've met the last 2 years, but it feels like Mayo on the up, Dublin on the decline. Is it enough to arrest the difference that we had just, what was it, 6 months ago when we had 7 or 8 months ago when we had the All-Ireland final?
Yeah, I think Dublin have they're what we've seen so far. They're definitely not as effective a team as they were like in December. I'm not quite sure why that is. You could see in the game against Kildare, there was so many mistakes that you wouldn't have even seen like last year. Just like there was block shots dropped short, bad shot selection that you certainly wouldn't have seen under Jim Gavin, and they've probably crept in now. Maybe there's a little bit of when they were playing under Jim Gavin. I mean, it seemed like it was such a high. Such a high intensity, like he demanded so much of players. Maybe when he leaves, you kind of, there has to be probably naturally a little bit of a drop in the level of players' demands on themselves. They're obviously still really, really good players. It'll be interesting to see what the Dublin lineup is like, because I think John Small back from a hamstring injury, really important player for them. He played 40 minutes, but I think it was he went off with a cut against his eye. Or Merchant came on.
Yeah.
I think in that first half, if Dublin played like they did in that first half against Kildare, I think Mayo would have beaten them. If they'd been playing Mayo that day, maybe we would have beaten them. Kildare didn't quite they weren't as kind of consistent a team as kind of Mayo will be. In the second half, I think Dublin missed 9 shots in that first half of the 18, I think, and they only missed 1 shot in the second half. So there was definitely a word ahead there. There was stuff was sorted out. I'm really impressed with Mayo so far. They have so many players that are playing well, like Ruan, O'Shea, Mullen. The forwards have kind of stepped up. They haven't you wouldn't think that they don't have their best forward in Kilkenny O'Connor.
Yeah.
Some of my favourites, I still think. I'm going to say Dublin -3.
Dublin -3. Okay, it's funny. Mayo building. There's sort of 2 new teams been built here, and it's quiet in a way. In Mayo, you wouldn't think. I was just looking at it. If you think Kevin McGrath came on at halftime the last day, it was him, Aidan O'Shea, Keegan, and Dermot O'Connor. I think I might be missing one, but they were the only ones that were left over from that kind of 16-17 team that should have won an All-Ireland. They've quietly built a completely new team that are nearly as good. Henley in goal, obviously been the other one, and he was normally behind Clark. Whereas Dublin, Gary, the difference with them, I think this year is they've been evolving constantly, and they had that thing where I always point to Kilkenny when TJ Reid comes into the team as a young lad. It takes him 4 years to become. He's in and out of the team, and you don't realise how good he is until you see him with more responsibility. And Dublin have had constantly lads like that all the way through this. They've evolved all the time. But now it's we've got a load of lads coming through, and you see their bench that they used against Kildare. Other than Merchant, who would be starting if he was fully fit, you're thinking, I don't know much about these guys. It's not as if it's not like before where they've been around for 4 or 5 years, and we've seen enough of them to know these will be good when they get a bit of responsibility and you trust them. We actually just don't know with these guys. They could end up being great, but they've way less. They've way less kind of to their name. We don't. I'm sure that Dublin are going to step this up the way everybody assumes they will now that they're out of Leinster. I can't see it. I don't understand why they're going to be so much better than they've been for the last 3 weeks.
And like, over the years as well, especially in games against Mayo, how many times have we seen the game be close and then Dublin go and have an explosive 10 minutes and bang on, throw on 1 or 2 subs, score 2 or 3, 2-3 in the space of 10 minutes, win the game, and that's it. You can't really see them doing that at this time. Like the game against Kildare, their forward line was so, I don't know, lackluster, lacked energy. I don't know what it was. It was kind of boring to watch, and it's never something that you'd associate with Dublin. Even in games in the past when Dublin were dominating possession and teams were sitting deep, they'd still be like pinpoint accurate in their passes, men running off the shoulder. They just wear you down and wear you down. I suppose the difference is now they're trying to do that, but they're also kicking the ball into the goalkeeper's hands at the end of it or kicking it wide, whereas that would never happen before. So, and I think Mayo aren't gonna let Dublin be like ponderous on the ball either. Like they have young backline there, young lads will be mad to get into this game. They're going to hassle and harry Dublin, so it'll be interesting to see how they react to that, because that's not something they would have faced in the championship yet either with the opposition they played in Leinster. So, like, I think it's a really interesting game. I'd love to see it come down to the last 5-10 minutes with a point or two in it either way, like, because I could just see anything could really happen from there. I think Dublin will be favourites, obviously, just because there's so much credit in the bank, as they should. -3 sounds right, but I think the Dublin tax may make it -4, so I'll go -4.
And PJ said -3. I was really into the analysis of it. I forgot about it. And look at this. The champ is not giving up his crown easy. It is Dublin -3. Good comeback so far from PJ. He's actually picked all 3 of them, but he just changed his mind on the first one. So moves us on to Kerry Tyrone. Look, I'm fascinated by the Dublin Mayo match. We'll talk in detail with Darren O'Sullivan about it next Monday, and we'll kind of look forward to it as the week goes on balls.ie, starting even this weekend. Kerry Tyrone, Gary, you're up first in this one. I don't know, like Tyrone, you win an Ulster final. I don't know if it requires all that much analysis against a good team like Monaghan. There is plenty of it to look at, whereas Kerry, their performance against Cork was so good in so many ways, and they blew them out of the water by so much that it's like we completely dismissed it. They were so good that it doesn't count.
Yeah, that's very true, because they were unbelievable in the second half of that game. It was the stuff they were doing up front was frightening. Like the way they were able to transition the ball from the half back line into the full forward line in the space of 5-10 seconds at times. Other times they'd be able to carry it, have lads run off the shoulder, like Cork, where it looked like it honestly looked like a senior team in a county playing a minor team. Like it was just men against boys out there, which is weird because when you consider that the lads in the Kerry forward line are all about 25 or younger. So this game is going to be fascinating. I'd say Tyrone will try and come out and hit Kerry hard earlier on and go at pace to try and test are they battle hardy enough for a team, and obviously Tyrone have had a much harder route to this point in the championship. So I'd say they will play defensively though, because I know Tyrone were getting a bit of praise earlier in the championship for how they've kind of shifted this system, but I don't think there's much you can do. You kind of have to, against this Kerry team, you have to stop the ball coming into the full forward line. Now you have Paddy Clifford to worry about as well as the other lad inside. He's the one getting it in there. So I think Kerry will win, but it will be an interesting test to see if they are where we think they are in terms of is their game in tip-top shape. This will be a real test of that. In terms of the handicap, I think -3 for Kerry sounds right. I think.
BJ, I was thinking that maybe Kerry actually played more games than normal in that they were in the Munster first round this year. I wonder, are they glad of the couple of weeks break so they can have one of the famous A versus B games that we were just talking about with Shane to seriously to get a little bit more of a kind of a test of intensity. The game was over so early in the Munster final that they don't have the 70 minutes of that under the belt. They did hammer Tyrone in the league. I'm less inclined, I think, to think of that, to worry about that than some people. But Tyrone have come through a very tough Ulster Championship as always, and come through it well. Really, I think. Are you in any way worried?
No, I don't think I'm worried, but I think it's going to be a real test of Kerry. That league game, what did Kerry score? 6-15 to 1. I think Tyrone got 1-14. I don't Tyrone have taken a couple of steps forward as a team since then. They weren't quite. They were trying to work on their attacking game at that stage. If you were to believe Aim Fitzmaurice, you would say that Tyrone did a full gym session on the day of the game. So I don't know how true that is.
That should have been in Finchy's 22 phrases, like, you know, that they trained that morning.
A run in the park as well, and a gym session. 2 training sessions before the match.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't be reading too much into that game. This is going to sound like a very Kerry man thing to say here. Kerry won their 3 Munster games by a combined 50 points. But while they've looked good, I haven't been they haven't given a full 70-minute performance yet. I haven't been super impressed with them. But they beat Clare by 17, they beat Tip by 11, and they beat Cork by 22. But remember they were down by 6 points to Cork in early on that game. When Micheál Martin saves that shot from David Clifford, there was a little bit of a deja vu back to last November.
Come on, PJ. It was the second biggest Munster final win in history.
Yeah.
The biggest in 101 years. And you're not impressed with them.
I don't think they've given a 70-minute performance yet.
But they gave a great 60-minute performance.
Yeah. Okay. Look. Yeah. Yes. I would say they've been very, very good. I just say I haven't been super impressed with them yet. I don't like. I think they have a lot of. There's still a lot of. They still have to get better. This isn't the complete kind of Kerry team. We haven't seen a complete Kerry performance yet. David Clifford didn't score from play against Cork,
No.
and which I think Padraig Campsey in this game he's going to be studying what Sean Meehan did to David Clifford there, how he kept Clifford got 1 point from a free. I think they'll also be looking at kind of what Brian Hurley did to Jason Foley, and how they did kind of damage to them early on. They did put Brina Brigley back, I think, on Brian Hurley after that, and he kind of Kerry took control of matters then. The game against Cork as well, I think it was interesting that Kerry started with what was essentially 3 midfielders. They had Diarmuid O'Connor, Jack Barry, and David Moore, and that Diarmuid O'Connor went off injured. They would I don't know what the injury situation is with him. He's become a very, very important player for them now. So we'll probably see out kind of next week for whether he'll be as a player or not. Yeah, I think Kerry -3.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say a little bit closer. I'm going to say Kerry -2.
Oh no, it is unbelievably, and I suppose why I've been going on so much about. Somebody here saying that Kerry will win by 5, Jack Nulty, and he's a lot closer to it, lads. It is Kerry -6. Dressing room wall, or what? That's incredible. I think that, again, maybe that's why I was going on about the league being a little bit been taken a little bit too seriously. Lads, I'm frantically going to get a tie break here because we don't have one. Okay, I am going to look for, if I could just give me 2 seconds.
There's an under-20 semi-final this weekend, I think, between Down and
Roscommon.
Yeah.
I don't think I've got a handicap on it. I do. Okay, here we go. PJ, considering he bailed us out, gets to pick whether he goes first or second on Down versus Roscommon in the under-20s All-Ireland semi-final.
God. I'll let Gary go first here. God, is that cowardly? I don't know.
Thanks for that,
Gary, who big fan of Roscommon, as we know, Athlone man. They like both sides of the bridge. When you're from Athlone, you're a big fan of both Roscommon and Westmeath. That's what I heard, anyway.
Yeah, definitely not. But I don't know what I know. Roscommon have been going quite well. Obviously, they won Connacht. I Down that game last week or whenever it was with against Monaghan. Obviously, everyone knows the circumstances around that. So that would have been a huge emotional drain on not only Monaghan but Down as well. So it'd be interesting to see how teams react. I'm kind of shooting in the dark here because obviously I didn't know this was going to come. I'm guessing Ulster is stronger than Connacht in general. So I reckon that Down might be favourites because of that. So I'm going to say Down -1.
Okay, PJ. There might not be a lot to say here, but
I did watch Roscommon actually. they were very good. They beat Mayo by 7 points in that Connacht final. This is a very hard one to call.
Another death dog on the show.
Yeah, since Gary went down -1, I'll just go on the other side. I got to say, I throw out all my knowledge about this game here. A down team managed by Conor Laverty. That's all I know about this down team, really, apart from that they beat Monaghan in the semi-final. I got to say Roscommon -1.
Okay, Roscommon -1. Gary says down -1. And the winner is Gary. It's down -2. Wearing the down colours really came, that was a lucky coincidence, I would say, on the day. Right, so our best the handicaps, or beat guess the handicaps of the year. So much from a mistake-free finish to the podcast. Gary wins it 3-2 after extra time and goes into the All-Ireland finals with, I'd say, a commanding lead in the series, but it's he who laughs last in this one. So the lads will be back with us in a couple of weeks. We'll be back on Monday with a review of the hurling semi-finals with Shane, and we'll look ahead to the 2 football semi-finals as we just whetted your appetite there a little bit. We'll have Darren on to look ahead to Dublin Mayo and to Kerry Tyrone. Join us then. Also, just as PJ mentioned, Pádraig Campsey there a couple of minutes ago, stay tuned to balls.ie this week, as Maurice Brosnan's embedded article this week will be about Hampsey and about man marking and who the best man markers are in football. So that's an interesting one to look at, especially with the Kerry Tyrone game in mind coming this week. Right, so back with you Monday. Enjoy the weekend. It's going to be a hell of a weekend of hurling.